In the soft, hazy glow of the afternoon sun, Eleanor Vance was folding laundry. She stood in the utility room, the warm, clean scent of detergent filling the air, but she wasn't really there. Her hands moved on autopilot. Fold a towel, match a pair of socks, his always gray, smooth a pillowcase, while her mind and her gaze were fixed on the glowing screen of her smartphone, resting on the counter. At 42 years old, her days had settled into a rhythm so predictable it was almost suffocating. The silence of the house was her constant companion. She would wake up in the morning, the alarm a needless formality. She'd listen to the sounds of her husband, Richard, showering, the buzz of his electric razor, the metallic snick of his briefcase clasps. She'd see him off at the door, a quick, dry kiss pecked onto her cheek, his mind already on his first meeting. "Have a good day," she'd say to his back. "You too," he'd reply, already halfway down the path. And then the house was hers again. The long, stretching hours of housework, errands, and quiet, creeping loneliness. She would clean surfaces that were already clean, buy groceries they would eat in silence. And then, like now, she'd find ways to waste the time, scrolling through the lives of strangers on social media until Richard came home in the evening. "Welcome home," she said last night, right on schedule at 6:15 p.m. "I'm home," he'd replied, loosening his tie as he walked past her toward the mail on the kitchen counter. That was it. That was the extent of their conversation. They had dinner. A pot roast she'd spent 2 hours preparing, while the television blared, filling the dining room with the noise of the nightly news. The anchor's voice felt like the third person in their marriage, the only one who had anything to say. After dinner, they had migrated to the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the sofa, each staring into the blue light of their own smartphone, a wall of light and silence between them. Later, they fell asleep without incident, two separate islands in the same bed. How many years had it been like this? Staring at her face in the bathroom mirror earlier that day, Eleanor had sighed, the sound barely audible. She leaned in, examining the reflection. She had certainly gotten older. There were fine lines at the corners of her eyes, laugh lines. Ironically, though she couldn't remember the last time she'd had a deep, genuine laugh. A small, permanent crease had formed between her eyebrows. But, she thought, pulling back, she still didn't look so bad. Her skin, once her pride, was still clear. Her eyes were still a deep, clear blue. When she worked as a beauty consultant at the high-end department store downtown, she would wear full, immaculate makeup every single day. She remembered the click of her heels on a marble floor, the scent of perfume samples misting the air, the feeling of authority and confidence as she advised women on how to be their most beautiful selves. Customers would often tell her how beautiful she was. "You have amazing bone structure," they'd say. "Your skin is flawless." It's been 15 years since she quit that job to get married, to build this life with Richard. 15 years. Where did that old self go? That confident, vibrant woman who turned heads, who spoke with purpose, who felt visible? Sometimes, Eleanor felt like she was haunting her own life, a ghost folding laundry in the afternoon sun. Her thumb paused as endless, aimless scrolling. An unfamiliar ad had appeared on her screen. It was sleek, minimalist, and vaguely alluring. OraConnect. Rediscover the spark in your relationship. At first, she thought it was just another cheesy couples counseling app or a spice up your marriage quiz. But the tagline beneath it was more provocative. New encounters to stimulate your marital relationship. For some reason, she couldn't take her eyes off it. It felt different from the garish, obvious ads. This one was discreet, sophisticated. Her fingers moved on their own, tapping the link. She read about the app. It promised complete and trustworthy adult encounters, a refreshing new perspective for marital harmony, and complete anonymity. As she read, the polite corporate language slowly peeled back to reveal its true purpose. It was a matching app, but not just any matching app. It was a so-called wife-swapping or partner-swapping platform. Her first reaction was a jolt of mild shock. Do people really do this? She wondered if something like this really existed outside of trashy novels. But the site was well-designed. It was professional. It wasn't seedy at all. In fact, it even featured testimonials, quotes from users. "I was initially anxious, but the new excitement improved my relationship with my husband. We're closer than ever. It gave me a chance to rediscover myself as a woman, not just a wife and mother. Complete anonymity gave me the safety to explore." Those words, rediscover myself as a woman, they resonated deep in her heart, in a place that felt hollow and dusty. I, too, wanted to be seen as a woman. Admitting that feeling, even to herself, was both terrifying and sweetly tempting. It felt like a betrayal, yet also felt like the first honest thought she'd had in years. Before she knew it, her fingers had clicked get started. She was on the profile creation page. Name, alias age, living area, brief self-introduction. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She typed Eleanor, 42-year-old full-time housewife. No, she deleted it instantly. Too real. Too sad. She typed again. Elara. It was a name she'd always liked. Distant, mysterious. Age, 42. Living area, city suburbs. Brief self-introduction. Looking for new encounters and a new perspective. She erased it, rewrote it, erased it again. The cursor blinked, waiting. She looked for a photo. She couldn't possibly use one of her face. She scrolled back through her camera roll, past pictures of the garden, pictures of family dinner from 2 Christmases ago. She found one she'd taken at a cafe last summer, meeting an old friend. It was just her hands, curled around a porcelain coffee mug, her wedding ring clearly visible. She selected that. Then she added another, a silhouette of her profile, taken against a bright window. Anonymous, but it showed her figure. Is this really okay? Her heart was hammering against her ribs. This was crazy. This was the kind of thing other people did. Not her. Not Eleanor Vance. Feeling a dizzying, thrilling mixture of anxiety and anticipation, Eleanor pressed a registration button. That night, the sound of the garage door rumbling open jolted Eleanor from her daze. 6:17 p.m. Right on time. She quickly locked her phone, the screen of the Aura Connect app vanishing as if it had never existed. She felt a flush of, what? Guilt? Shame? She pushed it down, composing her face into familiar, neutral mask of a wife waiting for her husband. Richard came in through the utility room, smelling faintly of the city and his car's leather interior. He set his briefcase down with a heavy, final thud. Welcome home, Eleanor said, her voice echoing slightly in the hallway. Hey, he replied. He didn't look at her, his attention already on the pile of mail she'd left on the kitchen counter. Anything interesting? Just bills. The quarterly water bill came in. It's a bit higher than last time, she said, following him into the kitchen. Right. I'll look at it later. He loosened his tie, a gesture so practiced it was almost unconscious. Dinner ready? In a few minutes. Pot roast. Sounds good. And that was it. That was the welcome. They ate dinner in the dining room, the heavy oak table a vast, polished expanse between them. The television was on, tuned to a 24-hour news channel. A political commentator was shouting about something. Richard watched, his fork moving rhythmically from his plate to his mouth. So, how was your day? Eleanor asked, the question sounding unnaturally loud in a pause between the commentator's tirade. Fine, Richard said, not taking his eyes off the screen. Same old. The quarterly projections are a mess. We had a meeting that ran for 3 hours. Oh, that sounds long, she offered. It was... He took a long drink of his beer. This roast is good. Thank you. Later, in the living room, the ritual continued. He sat in his leather armchair, laptop open, the blue-white light of spreadsheets reflecting in his glasses. She sat on the sofa, her own phone back in her hand. But tonight it felt different. It felt heavy, charged with a secret. She scrolled through Instagram, looking at pictures of recipes she'd never make and friends' children she'd never had. But her mind was elsewhere. She thought about Richard. He's not a bad person. He's never been unkind. He doesn't cheat on her. She was sure of that. He was pathologically predictable, which, for most of their marriage, she had mistaken for loyalty. He trusted her completely with the household finances, never questioning a purchase. He was, by all societal standards, a good, stable provider. But when was the last time he truly looked at her? Not a glance to see if she was there, but a look. The kind of look that said, I see you. You are a woman. You are my woman. She couldn't remember. It had been years. Their intimacy had faded so gradually. There was no single moment to point to. It had just evaporated, like water left in a glass. It was just gone one day. She excused herself, heading for the bathroom. Going to take a bath, she announced to his back. He replied, his fingers still tapping away at the keyboard. As the tub filled with scalding water and steam, Eleanor stared at her body in the full-length mirror. She undressed slowly, critically. It was certainly different from when she was in her 20s. Her body wasn't as taut. There was a softness to her stomach, a slight rounding of her hips that hadn't been there before. But as she turned to the side, she wasn't old enough to give up yet. Not by a long shot. Her breasts were still full. Her waist, though not as defined, still curved inward. Her skin was still smooth. She was still a woman, after all. A woman who was just dormant. She sank into the hot water, the heat a welcome shock. She closed her eyes. Her phone was on the bath mat, just within reach. She couldn't get the app out of her head. That little icon. That promise. She had downloaded it on a whim, a moment of quiet desperation. She never thought she'd actually be interacting with someone. She assumed she'd just browse, like windows shopping for a life she'd never have, and then delete it in a wave of shame. But she hadn't deleted it. The next morning, the house was silent again. Richard was gone. The only evidence of his existence was the faint scent of his aftershave in the bathroom and his empty coffee mug by the sink. Eleanor poured her own coffee, her hands trembling slightly. She sat at the kitchen table, the morning sun streaming in, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. She quietly opened her smartphone. She clicked on the app. A single, small red notification icon hovered over the Messages tab. One, a match had been made. Her heart didn't just race. It felt like it stopped, and then restarted with a painful, powerful thump. It hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird in a cage. Could this really mean someone was interested in her? In her, with her vague profile and faceless photos? She tapped the icon. His alias was Adam. His profile picture wasn't his face, either. It was a photo of his back, taken from a distance. He was standing on what looked like a mountaintop, wearing a hiking backpack, looking out over a vast green valley. He looked strong, grounded, well-built, yes, but it was the posture, the quiet confidence, that caught her attention. Adam, 39, architect, bio, just seeing what's out there, looking for a real conversation and a respectful connection. Complicated situation at home, but not a complicated person. And then a message from him. It was simple, polite. Nice to meet you, Elara. I saw your profile, and it resonated with me. Would you like to chat? She read it 3 times. It was polite and calm. It wasn't aggressive or seedy. There were no ulterior motives screaming from the text, no crude propositions. It struck her as gentlemanly. Her fingers hovered over the tiny keyboard. What was she doing? Nice to meet you, she typed back. I look forward to it. She hit send. Her heart was in her throat. She wondered what she was doing. This was a line. She knew she was crossing it, but she couldn't stop. The thrill was intoxicating. She didn't have to wait long. A reply came within minutes. Adam, thanks for replying. I'll be honest, I'm a little new to this. Feels strange, doesn't it? Elara, very strange. I just joined yesterday. I'm not even sure why I'm here. Adam, I think I understand. I'm married. I love my wife, in a way, but we've been roommates for, God, nearly 5 years now. No intimacy. She's a good person. I don't want to say anything bad about her. We just lost interest in each other. We're just 2 friends raising kids and paying a mortgage. His honesty was disarming. Eleanor felt a knot in her own chest loosen. Elara, I understand that more than you know. My situation is very similar, though we don't have kids. Elara, does your wife know you're on this app? She sent the message and immediately regretted it. Too personal. Too fast. But he took only a moment to answer. The 3 little dots appeared, then vanished, then appeared again. Adam, actually, yes. This is going to sound strange, but it was my wife who suggested it. Not this app specifically, but the idea. She said we were both too young to just give up on that part of our lives. She said we should both find some new stimulation, that it might even be good for us. Eleanor stared at the message. She was stunned. Is that even possible? That kind of relationship? She whispered to the empty kitchen. It was something she couldn't imagine in a million years. Her husband, Richard, had no idea she was even thinking these things. What would he think if he knew? He'd be appalled. Horrified. He would probably think she was sick. But Adam's wife, Eleanor, found herself, strangely, understanding her. The desire to feel alive again, to give her husband permission to be happy. Perhaps so she could be, too. Adam's words warmed Eleanor's heart. There was someone else out there. Someone who understood her. Just the thought of it The validation of her quiet, lonely ache brought sudden, hot tears to her eyes. She wiped them away, surprised by her own emotion. They messaged for another hour, about their jobs, her former one, his current one, about the city, about a vague, shared sense of feeling adrift in middle age. He was intelligent. He was witty. He was nice. Then a new message came through. Adam, I know this is forward, and please feel free to say no, but I'm finding this easier than I thought. If you're comfortable with it, would you like to meet sometime? Just for coffee. In a very public place. No pressure. I'd just like to talk to a real person. Coffee. The suggestion, so simple, so normal, shook Eleanor to her core. After she'd come this far, would they really meet? An actual physical meeting. She stood up from the table and walked to the hallway mirror, staring at her face. Her sleep-creased, makeup-free, 42-year-old face. Could she still do that? Put on makeup, put on nice clothes, and go meet someone new? A man who wasn't her husband. Was she still capable of doing that? She looked at the woman in the mirror, at the blue eyes that were no longer bright, at the mouth that rarely smiled, and a sudden, fierce wave of something washed over her. Defiance. Hope. Yes. She went back to the phone. Her fingers were steady now. Yes. I'd like to meet you, too. The moment she sent the reply, she felt it. A small, definitive crack in the smooth, predictable surface of her everyday life. It was a sweet, terrifying pain. It was the beginning of something new. The next afternoon, Eleanor found herself driving toward the city, a sense of purpose humming through her that she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't going grocery shopping or to the dry cleaners. She was on a mission. She parked in the familiar multi-story garage attached to the downtown department store, her department store, the place where she had once reigned. Walking through the automatic glass doors, she was hit by a wave of sensory memories. The cool, perfectly conditioned air. The faint, expensive smell. A carefully curated blend of leather from the handbag section. Coffee from the in-house cafe and the delicate, competitive cloud of perfume from the cosmetics hall. It smelled like ambition. It smelled like her past. She made a beeline for the cosmetics counters, a dazzling archipelago of light and glass. It was her old world. She saw the young women in their crisp black uniforms, their faces painted with perfect, aspirational beauty. They were her 15 years ago. A young consultant with a bright, genuine smile was helping a woman choose a foundation. This one has a lovely, dewy finish. She was saying, it won't settle into any fine lines. Eleanor smiled to herself. She remembered the script. She remembered the feeling of making another woman feel beautiful. The vicarious confidence it gave her. She stopped at a counter lined with lipsticks, gleaming like rows of colorful, elegant bullets. She picked up a tester, a bold, confident red. For years, she had worn nothing but a sheer, vaguely pinkish lip balm. It was practical. It was invisible. It was the lipstick of a woman who didn't want to be noticed. This red was the opposite. This red was a statement. That's a beautiful shade. It would be stunning with your coloring. Eleanor looked up. A young sales assistant, impossibly fresh-faced, was smiling at her. I used to work here, Eleanor heard herself say. A long time ago. At this very counter, actually. The girl's eyes widened slightly. Oh, wow. That's amazing. Well, you definitely know what you're doing, then. You should try it. Eleanor took a disposable applicator and carefully painted the color onto her lips. She stared at her reflection in the small, magnified mirror. The red was a shock of life against her pale skin. It made her blue eyes seem brighter, her teeth whiter. It transformed her face from something soft and muted into something definite. It suits you, the young woman said again, and this time the words struck a chord deep in Eleanor's heart. It wasn't just about the lipstick. It was about being seen, about being validated. Yes, a voice inside her whispered. I wanted to be praised, too. I wanted to be recognized as a woman. She bought the lipstick. She returned home feeling strangely energized, the small, weighted shopping bag of talisman in her hand. She opened her closet and was met with a sea of beige, gray, and sensible navy, the wardrobe of a suburban housewife. Practical blouses, comfortable slacks, and offensive cardigans. But in the back, behind a row of winter coats, was another collection of clothes. Her former self, preserved in silk and cashmere. She pushed past the sensible items and pulled out a dress she hadn't worn in ages. It was a wrap dress in a deep sapphire blue. Richard had bought it for her for their 5th anniversary dinner. He'd told her she looked like a movie star in it. She remembered feeling like one. It was slightly tight, more form-fitting than anything she wore now. Would it still fit? She changed in front of the full-length mirror on the closet door. She sucked in her breath as she pulled the fabric over her hips, tying the silk belt at her waist. And then she looked. It wasn't as bad as she'd feared. In fact, it wasn't bad at all. The dress clung to her. It accentuated her curves, the curve of her hips, the fullness of her bust. It made her look like a woman with a body, not just a person in clothes. The sapphire blue deepened the color of her eyes. For the first time in a decade, she looked in the mirror and didn't just see a wife, a homemaker, a ghost in her own house. She saw Eleanor. "I'll wear this tomorrow," she said to her reflection. Something inside her shifted, a tectonic plate moving deep beneath the surface. The moment she decided to go and meet someone, not as Richard's wife, not as a woman with fading skin, but simply as a woman, everything changed. That night, as she lay in bed, she gazed at Richard's sleeping form next to her. His back was to her, as it usually was. His breathing was a steady, rhythmic sigh. A wave of complicated feelings washed over her. Guilt, sharp and acidic. This man had given her a life of comfort and stability. He was asleep, oblivious, trusting. "I'm doing something terrible," she thought. "I'm betraying him." But another feeling bubbled up beneath the guilt, a stubborn, unyielding resentment. He had let this happen, too. He had stopped looking. He had stopped trying. He had settled into this comfortable silence, and in doing so, he had slowly suffocated her. She couldn't stop herself now. The need to breathe, to feel, was too strong. She wanted to relive that time when she shone, when she felt alive. That single, powerful feeling dominated her heart, eclipsing everything else. Her phone buzzed softly on the nightstand. A message from Adam. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow." Reading his words, a faint, nervous smile touched her lips. She didn't reply. She just turned the phone over, the anticipation, a warm, secret glow inside her. What kind of person will he be? And how will I feel when I get home? A night filled with a mixture of anxiety and excitement quietly passed. On the morning of their meeting, Eleanor stood in front of the mirror countless times. She took her time with her makeup, a ritual she hadn't truly performed in years. She blended foundation to hide the slight redness in her skin, used a soft brown shadow to define her eyes, and finished with 2 coats of black mascara. And then the lipstick, the bold, defiant red. Even she was amazed at how different her face looked. It was her, but amplified, more vivid. "I'm going out," she said to the empty house, her voice soft as she put on her shoes in the entranceway. Her husband was at work. He had no idea that today was not just another Tuesday. On the train into the city, she felt her hands begin to sweat. She clutched her handbag in her lap. Will this really be okay? What if he's awful? What if he's not who he says he is? But there was no turning back now. More than anything, she didn't want to turn back. The lobby of the luxury hotel he'd suggested was relatively quiet, a haven of calm on a weekday afternoon. Soft classical music played from hidden speakers. The air smelled of lilies and money. Eleanor stopped at the entrance to the lounge and took a deep, steadying breath. She was 5 minutes early. She walked in, her heels sinking slightly into the plush carpet. She scanned the room, a collection of comfortable sofa sets arranged in subdued, intimate groupings. "Ilara?" She turned toward the voice. A man was standing up from a chair in the corner, a gentle smile on his face. It was him. He was taller than she had imagined from his photo and more solidly built. But his expression was just as she had pictured. Kind, open, and a little nervous, which immediately put her at ease. "I'm Adam," he said, walking toward her. "Thank you for coming." "Eleanor," she said, her real name slipping out before she could catch it. She corrected herself quickly. "Ilara, it's nice to meet you." He didn't seem to notice her slip. He just smiled and extended his hand. "It's a pleasure, Ilara." The moment their hands touched, a jolt went through her, a small electric shock of contact. It had been years, literally years, since she had shaken a man's hand, since she had felt the warmth of anyone's touch other than the perfunctory peck on the cheek from her husband. His grip was warm and firm. "Real. Please have a seat," he said, gesturing to the armchair opposite his. "Can I get you something?" "Coffee. Coffee would be lovely, thank you," she said, her voice sounding surprisingly steady. Adam called the waiter over with a practiced, easy gesture and placed their order. He seemed comfortable here, at ease in this elegant, transient world. He turned his attention back to her his eyes a warm hazel, meeting hers directly. "Are you nervous?" he asked, his smile returning. "Yes," Eleanor answered honestly. "Very." "Me too," he confessed, letting out a small laugh. "Don't worry. This is only the third time I've ever actually done this." "The third time?" Eleanor asked, her eyebrows rising slightly. The admission, so candid, disarmed her. "So, your experience at this?" "God, no." He laughed, a short, self-deprecating sound. "I mean, this is the third time I've sat in a hotel lobby, drinking overpriced coffee, and feeling like I'm in a spy movie. The first time, I was so nervous, I think I spilled half my cup on the saucer. The second, we just didn't click. She was nice, but, it felt like a job interview. It's a strange process." The waiter arrived with their coffees, placing them on small, linen-draped coasters. The brief interruption gave Eleanor a moment to study him. He didn't seem like a predator. He didn't seem sleazy. He seemed normal, and just as nervous as she was. "So why?" She started, then hesitated. "Why are you doing it? If you don't mind me asking." Adam took a sip of his coffee, looking down into the cup as he gathered his thoughts. It's my wife. Not in a bad way." He added quickly, "I'm not here to complain about her. She's a wonderful person, a great mother to our 2 kids. We're a fantastic team. We run the house, we co-parent, we manage the finances. We're great business partners, really." He paused, and Eleanor waited, knowing exactly what was coming next. "But we haven't been husband and wife for a long time. I can't even tell you when it stopped. It just faded, and one night, about 6 months ago, we were talking. Really talking, for the first time in ages, and she suggested it. She said, 'We're 40 years old. We're not dead. We're too young to just shut down. We both deserve to wanted to feel that spark.'" Eleanor was astonished. "She suggested it?" "She did," Adam said, finally meeting her eyes. His were full of a complex, weary honesty. "She said she was tired of feeling guilty for not wanting me, and she was tired of me being sad. Her word, not mine. Though, she wasn't wrong. So we set some rules. We have an arrangement. Complete honesty that we're allowed to see other people, but absolute discretion about the details. We don't interfere. We don't ask questions. Our family, our home, that's sacred. This is just for us, as individuals." "And is she?" "Yes," he nodded. "She's been seeing someone for a few months. A guy from her yoga instructor course. I think, and honestly, it's been good for her. She's lighter. She laughs more. Our house is actually more peaceful than it's been in years. It's like the pressure is off." He let out a long breath. "So that's my story. Now I feel like I'm on a therapist's couch." He gave her a small, apologetic smile. "But that's enough about me. Why, if you don't mind me asking, is a woman like you on an app like this? You don't seem like the type." The spotlight turned on her, and it felt hot. All her carefully constructed composure threatened to crumble. She looked down at her own hands, wrapped around the warm porcelain cup. Her wedding ring felt suddenly heavy. How could she explain it? How could she put 15 years of quiet, creeping invisibility into words? I'm not sure I am the type," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've never done anything like this in my entire life." She took a breath. "My husband, Richard, he's a good man. He's decent. He's stable, reliable. He provides a beautiful home." She listed the virtues as if reading from a resume. "But I'm invisible to him." She finally looked up, and his gaze was so open, so patient, that the words just started to tumble out. "I feel like a ghost in my own life. I'm a piece of the furniture. I'm the person who makes the pot roast and folds the laundry and ensures the bills are paid. I'm a function. I'm part of the house. But I'm not Eleanor. I can't remember the last time he truly saw me as a woman, or even just as a person he's interested in." She stopped, horrified at her own confession. She'd never said any of this aloud. Adam was quiet for a long moment, just watching her. Then he said very gently, "That must be terribly lonely." That one word. It was as if he'd reached into her chest and pulled out the single, simple, aching truth. Tears sprang to her eyes, hot and immediate. She blinked them back, mortified. "Lonely," she repeated, her voice thick. "Yes, that's exactly it. It's a house full of silence. And I saw the ad for that app, and I thought, I just want to feel real just for an afternoon. to sit across from someone who was actually looking at me. Adam leaned forward, his voice low and sincere. Well, for what it's worth, I cannot understand how any man could be in the same room as you and make you feel invisible. Eleanor felt a blush, a real, hot blush, creep up her neck. Oh, I mean it, he said. When you walked into this lounge, you honestly took my breath away. That's the truth. When I saw your profile, even just a silhouette, there was an elegance to it. I wanted to meet the woman who held herself that way. It's just this dress, she said, trying to deflect, her hand fluttering to her collarbone. And this ridiculous lipstick. I haven't worn red lipstick in, I don't know if I ever have. It's not the dress, he said, smiling. And it's not the lipstick. Well, his smile widened. The lipstick is fantastic, but it's you. You're luminous. It had been years. Years. She laughed, a short, nervous sound. Well, thank you, to break the intensity of the moment. She took a quick sip of coffee. So, she said, desperate to change the subject, you're an architect? He took the cue, leaning back. I am. I design commercial spaces, mostly office buildings, community centers. Try to make spaces that people actually want to be in, not just exist in. Spaces that make people feel something, she murmured, struck by the parallel. Exactly, he said, his eyes lighting up. That's the goal, anyway. What about you? Your profile, it was a little mysterious. It just said former beauty consultant. That's me, she smiled. I worked at the department store just across the street, actually, at the cosmetics counters, for almost 10 years before I got married. Really? He said, clearly intrigued. That makes perfect sense. You have this incredible poise, and you obviously know your way around a lipstick. I love that job, she admitted, surprised at the pang of nostalgia. I love the energy, the transformation. I love talking to people all day, making them feel good about themselves. You must miss it. More than I realize, I think, she said quietly. They talked for another hour. The nervousness melted away, replaced by an easy, flowing conversation. They talked about his work, about her old job. They discovered a shared love for old black and white movies, the kind Richard always called boring. They got particularly excited talking about a classic film noir that was being re-released at the independent cinema downtown. I have been dying to see that on a big screen, she said, her enthusiasm genuine. Me too, he said. My wife, she's not a fan. She'd rather watch a true crime documentary. Richard only watches the news or sports, Eleanor replied, and they shared a small, knowing laugh. Adam looked at her, a speculative, hopeful light in his eyes. Well, he said, testing the waters, I know we just met, but if you like, maybe we could go and see it together? No pressure. Just as two people at the same weird, old movies. Eleanor was taken aback. This implied a next time, a future. This wasn't just a one-time, anonymous confession in a hotel bar. This was a date. She found herself replying before she'd even fully thought it through. Yes, I'd be okay with that. I'd be happy to, actually. His smile was pure, uncomplicated relief. Thank you. I'd really enjoy that. The waiter, seeing their cups were empty, glided over. More coffee for you, sir. Ma'am. Adam glanced at his watch and seemed surprised by the time. It was already past 4 p.m. He looked at Eleanor, then back at the waiter. Actually, he said, his voice decisive, could we see the menu for the restaurant? He turned back to Eleanor, his expression open and a little bashful. I know this is forward, and please feel free to say no. But I'm enjoying this conversation more than I have in a very long time. I don't suppose you have time to stay for an early dinner here at the hotel? The suggestion hung in the air, shifting the atmosphere completely. Her heart gave a single, hard thump. This was the real crossroads. Coffee was innocent. A movie, set for another day, was still plausibly platonic. But dinner? At the hotel? Now, this was an invitation to let the afternoon slide seamlessly into the evening. And the evening was when things happened. He wasn't just asking her to share a meal. He was asking her to stay. She thought of home, the empty, silent kitchen, the pot roast she would have to prepare, the silent meal in front of the television. Richard, who would grunt a low, ask how her day was and not listen to the answer. He wouldn't even notice if she was a few hours late. I ran into an old friend from the store, she'd say. We had dinner. It would be so easy. She looked at Adam. He was just watching her, waiting. No pressure, just an invitation. She thought of the woman in the mirror that morning, the woman in the sapphire blue dress and the defiant red lipstick. She hadn't put on that armor, just a retreat at the first hurdle. Eleanor took a small, steadying breath. Yes, she said, her voice quiet but firm. I have time. I'd love to. The hotel restaurant was a different world from a lounge. While the lounge was about transient comfort, this was a place of deliberate, quiet luxury. It was dimly lit, with small, soft glowing lamps on each table, creating intimate pools of light in the larger darkness. The clink of silverware on porcelain was muted, and the conversations from other tables were just a low, indecipherable murmur. It was the kind of restaurant Eleanor and Richard had stopped going to, if they had ever really gone at all. It was a restaurant for lovers, or for people celebrating something truly special. The thought sent a simultaneous thrill and a pang of guilt through her. A waiter, dressed in a crisp black suit, led him to a secluded table by a large window that overlooked a small, floodlit Japanese garden. This is lovely, Eleanor said, sinking into the plush velvet chair. I'm glad you like it, Adam replied, taking the seat opposite her. He picked up the wine list. Do you like wine? Perhaps a white? Or a red? A red would be nice, she said, feeling a flush of sophistication. A Cabernet, maybe? Excellent choice. He ordered a bottle with an ease that, once again, made her feel she was in capable hands. He wasn't showy, just decisive. When the wine arrived and they had each taken a sip, the rich, dark liquid felt like a warm, comforting blanket, settling her nerves and sharpening the edges of the moment. The intimacy of the setting, combined with the wine, shifted their conversation. It became quieter, more personal. So, Eleanor began, tracing the rim of her glass with her finger. Your wife, the arrangement you have. Is it really working? It sounds so mature, so civilized. Adam swirled his wine, watching the red liquid cling to the glass. That's a good word for it, he said with a wry, slight smile. Civilized. I suppose it is. Working, that's a different question. Is it working to save our marriage? No. I think our marriage, in the traditional sense, was already over. Is it working to save our family? And our sanity? Yes, I think it is. He leaned in, lowering his voice. She's a serious person. Very organized, very responsible. She's a good mother, as I said. But that passion, that spark, it's just gone. It's been gone for a long time. It's not that we dislike each other. We're more like friends now. Really good, efficient friends who live together and share a mortgage. And I guess we both decided that wasn't enough to sustain us as people for the next 40 years. He looked up, his hazel eyes finding hers in the dim light. Does that make any sense? Or do I sound like a monster? No, Eleanor said, her voice breathy. No, it makes perfect sense. She took another sip of wine, the alcohol giving her the courage to voice her own truth. That's the part one I identify with, the friends living together. Richard is a very serious man, too. He's a good man. He works hard. He doesn't cheat on me. I'm almost positive of that. He's reliable. He leaves all the financial matters to me. Trust me completely. But, Adam prompted gently. But, I don't know if he even sees me anymore, she confessed, the words tasting bitter. Not as a woman, anyway. I'm 42, and I feel like I'm 80. I feel like my life, the vibrant part of it, is just over. He comes home. We ask about each other's day. We eat dinner while watching the news, and then we sit in the same room, staring at different screens until it's time to go to sleep. In separate beds? She added, posing as a question. No, Adam said. Same bed, which is almost worse. Lying 2 feet away from someone, in complete silence. The lack of contact is so loud, sometimes it's deafening. Yes, Eleanor said, her eyes wide. She hadn't realized until this very second. That's it exactly. The lack. It's a physical presence. It's this cold, empty space in the bed between you. And you lie there night after night, and you get used to it. You adapt. You grow cold, too. And then one day, you look in the mirror, and you don't even recognize the person looking back at you. Their food arrived, a perfectly seared steak for him, a delicate piece of halibut for her. But the food was secondary. The real nourishment was this connection. Adam looked at her, his expression serious, his gaze unwavering. He's a fool. Eleanor paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. What? Your husband, Adam said, his voice low and firm. He's a fool. To be in the same house with a woman like you, a woman who is so vibrant and so beautiful, and to not see it, to not worship it. It's a criminal waste. The words. Oh, the words. They landed on her like a physical touch, like the sun on her skin after a long, cold winter. Vibrant, beautiful. Tears welled again, but this time she wasn't ashamed. She just smiled, a wobbly, watery smile, and looked down at her plate. I can't believe you're saying that to me, she whispered. I'm just a 42-year-old housewife. No, he said, reaching across the table. His fingers brushed the back of her hand, which was resting on the white tablecloth. It was the lightest of touches, but an electric current shot up her arm. You're not. You're an incredibly attractive, intelligent, and captivating woman, and you're wearing the most fantastic red lipstick I've ever seen. And if he can't see that, then he's the one who's blind. Not you. Don't ever think it's you. She could barely breathe. Thank you, she managed to say. They ate, the conversation flowing again, but the undercurrent had changed. The subtext was now text. His touch, though brief, lingered on her skin. His words were echoing in her head. They finished their meal, declined dessert, and Adam paid the bill. As they stood up, a new kind of anxiety settled in. The anxiety of what next. The evening was, by all normal measures, over. They walked back into the lobby, which was even quieter now. The sound of the city outside felt a million miles away. Well, Eleanor said, clutching her purse, That was the most wonderful dinner I've had in a very long time. Thank you, Adam. It was for me, too, he said. He looked at the clock over the reception desk. It was already past 8 p.m. It's a fun time. Me, too, she said, her voice small. It was really nice talking to you, Eleanor. He used her real name, the one she'd let slip. He'd remembered. He stepped a little closer. I don't really want this evening to end. He touched her hand again. Not a brush this time. He took it. His hand was large, warm, and dry. His thumb stroked the back of her knuckles, a slow, deliberate, questioning gesture. The warmth of his hand, that simple human contact, seemed to melt her bones. Eleanor, he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Would you like to stay with me? A little longer? She knew exactly what those words meant. This was the precipice. From here on out, it would truly be something else. This was no longer coffee. This was not a movie. This was a line. She thought of Richard, asleep in their bed, or more likely, dozing in his armchair, the laptop still glowing on his lap. A pang of guilt, sharp and familiar. But then she thought of herself, the woman in the mirror, the red lipstick, the feeling of being seen, the warmth of his hand, the words vibrant and beautiful ringing in her ears. She felt, for the first time in 15 years, utterly, breathtakingly alive. There was no more hesitation. This was a choice. Her choice. She looked up at him, her blue eyes clear and direct. Yes, she nodded slightly, her voice steady. A small, relieved smile touched his lips. He squeezed her hand, and as they walked toward the elevators, something inside Eleanor unlocked. They stood in the elevator as it glided silently upward. The air was thick with anticipation. Adam wasn't looking at her, but he still held her hand. As the floor numbers lit up, he spoke softly, his gaze on the polished doors. You don't have to do anything you don't want to, Eleanor. You know that, right? If this is too much or too fast, you just tell me. We can just talk. His consideration, his kindness, the fact that he was giving her an out, even now, only made her open up more. It shattered her last remaining shard of doubt. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't demanding. This was a man she could trust. I know, she said, her voice soft. Thank you, but I want to be here. The elevator doors opened onto a quiet, plushly carpeted hallway. Their footsteps were muffled as he led her to a room at the end. He unlocked the door and pushed it open, holding it for her to enter. He didn't turn on all the lights, just a single, soft lamp in the corner. The room was dominated by a massive, floor-to-ceiling window. Adam walked over to it, pulling back the heavy curtain to reveal a glittering, breathtaking panorama of the city's night view. Wow! Eleanor breathed, standing beside him. The city lights twinkled like a carpet of fallen stars, endless and bright. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he said, his voice a low rumble beside her. "Yes," she whispered, her gaze on the thousand lights. "It's Eleanor." She turned. He was looking at her, not the view. His eyes, even in the dim light, were fixed on her face with an intensity that made her heart stop. "You," he said, his voice thick, "are beautiful." He raised his hand, his fingers gently tracing the line of her jaw, his thumb brushing over the red lipstick on her lips. At that moment, an electric current, a feeling she'd long forgotten, a deep pulling, undeniable want, ran through her entire mind and body. The word beautiful hung in the air, a simple, profound statement that seemed to stop time. His hand was on her face, his thumb gently, almost reverently, brushing her lower lip. That single point of contact was a live wire, and the electric current it sent through her wasn't just physical. It was a jolt to her very soul, a sudden, blinding light in a room that had been dark for a decade. She hadn't realized she had been holding her breath until this very moment. She exhaled a shaky, small sound. Adam's eyes searched hers, and in them, she saw no game, no agenda. She saw only the same, simple, honest desire she felt rising in herself. He leaned in, slowly, giving her every chance to turn away, to break the spell. Eleanor didn't move. She couldn't. She wouldn't. This was what she had come for. This was the answer to the question she hadn't even known how to ask. And then his lips touched hers. It was not a demanding kiss. It was a question. It was soft, warm, and tentative. But the moment of contact was an explosion. A long-forgotten, half-remembered sensation returned to her body with the force of a tidal wave. It had been so long, so achingly long, since she had been kissed like this. Kissed with purpose. Kissed with want. Richard's kisses were dry pecks on the cheek, habitual and bloodless. This was life. She made a small sound in the back of her throat, a sound of pure, unadulterated relief, and kissed him back. The tentativeness vanished, replaced by a sudden, sheer hunger. His other hand came up to her waist, pulling her closer, and she went willingly, her own hands finding their way to his shoulders, clinging to him as if he were the only solid thing in a spinning world. The kiss deepened, and it was everything. It was a conversation. It was a confession. It was a release of 15 years of loneliness, of feeling invisible, of being a ghost in her own home. Every second his mouth was on hers. He was silently, powerfully telling her, "I see you. I want you. You are real." When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. They rested their foreheads together, the city lights painting the room in a soft, unreal glow. "Adam," she whispered, the name feeling strange and new on her lips. He smiled against her skin. "I'm right here," he murmured. He kissed her forehead, then her temple, then the high arch of her cheekbone. His hand on her waist was warm through the silk of her dress. "Are you sure, Eleanor? Are you sure you want this?" That he would ask her now, after that kiss, was the most profound kindness he could have shown. He wasn't taking. He was offering. He was ensuring she was a participant, not a conquest. She pulled back just enough to look him in the eyes, her own shining in the dim light. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and strong. All the anxiety, all the guilt had evaporated, burned away by the heat of this one simple, human connection. "I am sure." His smile was slow and devastatingly gentle. He didn't rush. He didn't grab. He simply kept his eyes on hers as his hand moved from her waist to the silk tie of her wrap dress. His fingers found a knot, and with a single, slow pull, the dress loosened. Eleanor's heart hammered. She stood still as he pushed the sapphire blue silk from her shoulders. The dress whispered as it slid down her arms, pooling at her feet on the plush carpet. She stood before him in her simple, practical underwear, the kind of beige, unexciting lingerie a woman who hadn't expected to be seen in a decade would wear. A flicker of self-consciousness, of shame, sparked in her. She instinctively moved across her arms, but he caught her hands. "Don't," he whispered. He stepped back, his gaze sweeping over her, from her shoulders to her stomach to her legs. It was not a lecherous look. It was appreciative. It was, she realized with a jolt, the look of an artist, of an architect. He was admiring the lines, the form. "Beautiful," he said again, his voice thick with genuine awe. "Eleanor, you are absolutely magnificent." He touched her again, his hands tracing the curve of her collarbone, his fingers light, as if she were made of priceless porcelain. His touch was so different from Richard's, which in the rare moments it happened, was fumbling and goal-oriented. Adam's touch was a journey. It was exploratory, curious, and infinitely patient. Her body, so long dormant, so long ignored, began to respond. Her skin grew hot where he touched her. A deep, slow-building heat started low in her stomach. He led her to the bed, never breaking that gentle, reverent contact. The lights of the city outside were their only illumination. He was right. This was not a hurried, fumbled encounter. He took his time, and in doing so, he gave her time. Time for her body to remember what this felt like. Time for her mind to accept that this was real. He lovingly, patiently, cared for her. He rediscovered parts of her that she herself had forgotten. He whispered praise against her skin, telling her she was beautiful, that she felt amazing, that she was incredible. And with every word, with every touch, Eleanor regained her feminine instincts. She was not just a wife. She was not just a housekeeper. She was a woman, desirable, passionate, alive. The woman in the mirror with the red lipstick had been a promise, but this was a fulfillment. And finally, when neither of them could bear the sweet, slow tension a moment longer, the two were united. It was a moment of profound, shattering release. It was more than a physical act. It was an emotional cataclysm. It was a release of every lonely dinner, every silent evening, every night spent lying awake in the cold, empty space of her bed. All that frozen, dormant emotion, the quiet rage, the deep sadness, the desperate longing, it all melted, all at once, in a wave of overwhelming sensation. She heard a voice, a raw, unfamiliar sound, and realized with shock that it was her own. Tears streamed from the corners of her eyes, hot and silent. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of being found, of returning to a part of herself she thought was dead and buried. Afterward, she lay in his arms, her body humming with the aftershocks, her cheek resting on his chest. She could feel the steady, strong beat of his heart beneath her ear. The room was quiet again, save for their breathing and the distant, muted sound of the city far below. She felt utterly fulfilled, boneless and warm. "Thank you," she whispered into his skin, the word small and inadequate. Adam's hand, which had been gently stroking her back, moved up to her hair. He stroked it, his fingers threading through the strands, a gesture of pure, uncomplicated tenderness. Outside the window, the city lights twinkled, indifferent and beautiful. Eleanor wanted to remember this moment forever. She wanted to bottle this feeling, the feeling of being truly, completely seen. It had been, she realized, a night where she felt more truly alive as a woman than she had in her entire 15-year marriage. But as the minutes ticked by, as her heartbeat returned to normal, the bubble of the hotel room began to thin. The outside world, her real life, began to press at the edges of her mind. Richard, home, the lie she would have to tell. As if he could read her mind, Adam's voice rumbled softly from his chest. "Are you okay?" "Yes," she sighed. "More than okay." He paused, and she could feel him choose his next words carefully. Are you going to be okay tonight? When you go home, your husband, is he waiting up for you?" The question was a pinprick to the beautiful illusion. "No," she said, her voice a little less certain. "He's probably asleep in his chair. He doesn't really check on me." She sat up, pulling the sheet with her to cover her chest. The complicated feelings were returning. Guilt, sharp and cold, mixing with the lingering warmth of his touch. "It's a little complicated, isn't it?" "I was the same at first," Adam said, sitting up beside her. He didn't seem to feel the same chill she did. He was calm, his reality already sorted. Is it something you get used to?" she asked, genuinely curious. How could anyone get used to this emotional whiplash? He looked at her, his expression unreadable in the dark. "Rather than getting used to it," he said, his voice quiet and even, "you learn to accept it. You learn to compartmentalize. This is this and that is that." Eleanor stared at him, the city lights reflected in her eyes. This is this and that is that. Could she really do that? Could she draw a line down the center of her life, her heart, and keep the two sides from ever touching? She looked at the clock on the bedside table. The red digital numbers glared at her. 11:15 p.m. "You're right," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I'd be tired if I can go home soon." Adam didn't argue. He understood. This was that part of the equation. He nodded, his expression softening with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "You're right." He swung his legs off the bed and stood, completely unself-conscious in his nakedness, and began gathering his clothes. Eleanor watched him for a moment, the strong, broad line of his back, the easy confidence in his movements. She then slipped out of the bed, the sheet falling away, and quickly found her own clothes, her back turned to him as she dressed, a sudden, needless modesty returning. I'll get a cab downstairs, she said, her voice slightly muffled as she pulled the sapphire dress over her head. The silk felt different now, charged with the memory of the night. No, don't be ridiculous, Adam said, zipping his trousers. I'll call you an Uber. Or I can drive you. I'm parked just a few blocks away. No, she said a little too quickly. No, please. It's better if I just get a cab. It's simpler, safer, for both of us. He paused in the act of pulling on his shirt. He understood what she was really saying. No trails, no links. He nodded again, this time with a more somber understanding. Okay, you're right. Simpler is better. She finished dressing, her fingers fumbling with the tie on her dress. He came up behind her, his hands stilling hers. He gently took the silk ties from her, his fingers brushing her waist as he expertly tied the bow. His touch, even in this simple, practical gesture, sent a shiver through her. She turned to face him. He was dressed now, just a man in a hotel room, but he was still looking at her with that same intensity, that same profound seeing. Thank you, Adam, she said, her voice low, for tonight, for everything. It was for me, too, he interrupted softly. More than you know. He hesitated, and she saw the question in his eyes, the one she was both dreading and longing for. Can I see you again, Eleanor? Her heart, which had just begun to settle, gave a painful lurch. This was the moment. Was this a one-time, beautiful, aberrant night, a single star falling from the sky? Or was it the beginning of something new, something complicated and terrifying and wonderful? Yes, she heard herself say, the word coming out on a breath. I'd like that. Yes. A slow, brilliant smile spread across his face. It was a smile of pure relief. Good, he whispered. Good. He didn't kiss her again on the lips. He simply leaned in and pressed a long, warm kiss to her forehead. Please be careful on your way home, he murmured against her skin. Text me. Just so I know you're safe. I will, she promised. She stepped out into the hallway, the plush carpet swallowing the sound of her footsteps. As she pressed the button for the elevator, she felt the lingering effects of the night all over her body, a warm, heavy hum. Her skin was sensitive. Her lips still felt swollen from his kisses. She was about to return home, to her house, to her husband, as if nothing had happened. The thought sent a wave of icy anxiety through her, a stark contrast to the warmth she'd felt moments before. Guilt and euphoria warred within her, a dizzying, disorienting cocktail. Something had definitely changed, and it was an irreversible change. It was past midnight when the cab dropped her at the end of her quiet, suburban street. She'd asked the driver to stop there, not wanting the sound of a car door to wake Richard. The house was dark, just as she predicted. The only light was a small, symbolic porch light she always left on. She let herself in as quietly as a thief, her keys barely making a sound in the lock. The house was silent. She could hear the faint, low hum of the refrigerator. She took off her shoes in the entranceway and crept through the dark hallway. A sliver of blue light emanated from the living room. She peeked in. Richard was exactly where she'd pictured him, asleep in his leather armchair, his head tilted back an awkward angle, his mouth slightly open. His laptop was still balanced on his lap, the screen dark, and the television was on, muted, casting flickering, ghostly shadows across his face. She stared at him for a long, quiet moment. This was her life. Her husband, the man she had promised to love and honor. A wave of not guilt, but profound, deep sadness washed over her. He looked old, tired, and so oblivious. Just a few hours ago, she had been in the arms of another man, feeling things she hadn't felt in 15 years. And now here she was, lying next to the man who was the reason she'd sought them. Welcome home. You're late. His voice, gravelly with sleep, made her jump, her heart leaping into her throat. He'd woken up. He was blinking, confused, pushing his glasses up his nose as he tried to focus on her. Oh, she said, her hand flying to her chest. You scared me. I thought you were asleep. He mumbled, scrubbing his face with his hands. What time is it? It's just after midnight, she said, amazed at how calm her voice sounded. I met Sarah from the old department store. We got to talking and, well, you know how it is. We had dinner, and we talked too much. I'm so sorry I didn't call. The lie came out fully formed and surprisingly easy. It felt practiced, even though it was the first of its kind. Sarah, he repeated, the name meaning nothing to him. Right. He yawned, a huge, jaw-cracking yawn. Well, it's fun. Yes, Eleanor said, the word catching in her throat. It really was, it was a lot of fun. It wasn't entirely a lie. It had, certainly, been a very enjoyable night. Good, he muttered, pushing himself up in the chair with a grunt. I'm heading to bed. Night. Good night, she said, watching him shuffle zombie-like out of the room and up the stairs. He hadn't kissed her. He hadn't touched her. He hadn't even truly looked at her. She let out the breath she'd been holding, her shoulders slumping. She was safe. The lie had worked. She headed to the bathroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Eleanor wondered if what had happened tonight was even real. Her face looked different, flushed, her eyes bright, her pupils still slightly dilated. Her hair was a mess, and her red lipstick was long gone, kissed away. The sensation of Adam's lips, his hands, his body, still lingered, a phantom presence. As she took a shower, the hot water beating down on her, she stared at her own body. Memories of the places he had touched, the places he had kissed, the words he had whispered, came back to her vividly. Every time the hot, stinging water ran over her skin, the aftereffects of the night welled up from deep within her, a physical, undeniable ache. What have I done? She muttered, the words lost in the sound of the water. But it wasn't a question of regret. It was a question of wonder. For the first time in a long, long time, she felt truly, fully alive. She felt like a woman. She crawled into bed, the space next to her already occupied by Richard, who was snoring softly, his back to her. The familiar scene felt alien. Just a few hours ago, she'd been in a different bed, a different world. And now she was back, lying next to him, her skin still humming with another man's touch. She lay awake for a long time, staring into the darkness, the secret of the night a warm, heavy weight inside her. The next morning, after Richard headed to work, bye, have a good day, you too, the same script as always. Eleanor sat alone with her coffee, reminiscing about the previous night. The house felt the same, but she was different. Her smartphone buzzed on the counter. A message from Adam. Thank you for the wonderful time last night. That was more than I expected. Did you get home safely? Eleanor's heart did a slow, warm flip. The polite, kind message at check-in was so thoughtful. It wasn't a message of a man who was just looking for one night. Thank you, too, she typed back, her fingers trembling slightly. I got home safely. It was wonderful for me, too, after sending the reply. She stood in front of the mirror again. For some reason, her skin looked better than usual, clearer. Her expression was brighter. She was surprised and a little frightened at how much one night had changed her. That afternoon, as she was folding another load of laundry, her phone rang. It wasn't a text. It was a call from him. Her heart leaped. She fumbled for the phone, wiping her damp hands on her jeans. Hello? Hi. His voice came through the line warm and low and real. Are you free to talk for a minute? Yes, she said, sinking onto the bench in the utility room. Yes, I'm free. Good. I got your message. I'm glad you got home safe. I've been thinking about you. All day. I've been thinking about you, too, she confessed. There was a pause, a small, charged silence. Then he said, Eleanor, I know this is fast. And I know we both have complicated lives. But last night, that wasn't just a one-time thing for me. I'd like to spend more time with you. Her breath hitched. More time. Yes, he said, his voice firm. Regularly. I'm not just talking about another dinner. I'm talking about dating, if you're open to it. Of course, we'd have to be careful. We'd accommodate your schedule, my schedule, but I want to see you again. And again. Dating. A sustained relationship. This was a step into a much deeper, more dangerous world. This was an affair. The word echoed in her head, tasting like sin and excitement. Last night, she could have convinced herself, was a one-time aberration, a moment of madness. This was a conscious choice. But she also had a strong, undeniable desire to experience a fulfillment, the life she had felt last night again. Adam, she stammered. I'm married. You're married. I know, he said, his voice calm and reassuring, not pressuring. That's why I think we can understand each other's positions. That's why this could work. We both know the rules. We both know what's at stake. I need to think, she said, her mind spinning. Can I think about it for a bit? Of course, he said immediately. Of course. There's no rush. At all. Just think about it. That's all I asked. After hanging up the phone, Eleanor sat in the quiet utility room, the scent of clean laundry around her, her heart hammering. A sustained relationship. It would mean stepping into a deeper world of deceit. But it would also mean living. Eleanor spent the next 48 hours in a fog. Her body was on autopilot, moving to the familiar, quiet rhythms of her house. But her mind was miles away, in a dimly lit hotel room, replaying every word, every touch. She would be standing at the sink, washing dishes, and would suddenly stop, her hands submerged in the soapy water, her gaze fixed on the backyard, her heart hammering as she remembered the feel of Adam's lips on hers. Then a wave of cold dread would wash over her. Dating. What he was proposing was not a single, beautiful mistake. It was a decision, a deliberate, sustained act of deception. She thought about Richard. She thought about the quiet, stable, predictable life he provided. She thought about the vows she had made in a white dress in a church full of flowers 15 years ago, in sickness and in health. Did this count? This sickness of the soul, this emotional starvation? That night, she watched Richard as he dozed in his armchair, the news flickering across his oblivious face. A swell of pity and a sharper, surprising anger rose in her. Look at me, she wanted to scream. Wake up and see me before it's too late. But he just snored softly. She knew, in that moment, that she couldn't go back. She couldn't unfeel what she had felt with Adam, to return to the ghostly silence, to the invisibility. Now that she knew what it felt like to be seen, it would be a living death. The risk of the affair was terrifying, but the certainty of her current life was, she realized, unbearable. She went to her phone. Her hands were shaking. She typed erase and retyped the message a dozen times. Finally, she just wrote, I can't stop thinking about you. When can I see you again? His reply was almost instantaneous. I've been waiting for this message. How about next Tuesday? Same time. A week later, Eleanor found herself in the lobby of a different hotel. This one was smaller, a boutique establishment in a quieter, more residential part of the city. It was, she knew, a pattern. This was their new reality. When Adam walked in, her heart didn't just flutter. It felt like it soared. He saw her, and his entire face lit up with a smile so genuine, so full of warmth and undisguised pleasure at the sight of her, that she felt beautiful before he'd even said a word. Hi, he said, his voice low as he reached her. He didn't touch her, not here in the lobby. He just stood a little too close, his gaze proprietary and warm. Hi, she breathed. The nervousness of the first meeting was gone, replaced by a thrumming, electric anticipation. She felt more relaxed, more herself. You look, he said, his eyes scanning her. Wow, you really look incredible, Eleanor. She blushed. She had spent an hour getting ready. She'd worn a new dress, a deep emerald green that brought out her eyes. And, of course, the red lipstick. It was her war paint. Thank you. You don't look so bad yourself. This time, there was no pretense of coffee. He had already checked in. They went straight to the elevator, a comfortable, charged silence between them. The moment the room door clicked shut behind them, he had her against it, his mouth finding hers in a kiss that was not tentative or exploratory, but deep and familiar and hungry. I've missed you, he murmured against her lips, his hands framing her face. I've thought about this moment every minute for the last week. Me too, she confessed. This second night was different. The explosive, desperate discovery of the first time was replaced by something else, something deeper. Without the tension and anxiety of the unknown, they were able to simply be. They made love with a tenderness and a depth that was, in its own way, even more profound than the first time. He was, as she remembered, as gentle as ever. He was an attentive, patient lover, focused entirely on her pleasure. He loved, as he said, every inch of her, and he took his time doing it. For Eleanor, it was a re-education. Her body, which had been a purely functional thing for so long, an engine for her housework, a vessel for sleep, became a source of profound joy and pleasure. I'm truly happy when I'm with you, he whispered afterward, stroking her hair as she lay curled against his chest. I honestly feel the same way, she replied, and she meant it. She felt a simple, uncomplicated happiness she hadn't known she was capable of. Spending time with Adam became the central, secret, shining part of her life. For the next 2 months, they met once a week. Tuesday afternoons became sacred. She would tell Richard she was joining a book club or meeting her old friend Sarah. He never questioned it. He barely seemed to register it, his mind on his work, his meetings, his spreadsheets. During that time, undeniable changes began to appear in Eleanor's daily life. The woman who had been a ghost in her own house began to materialize. She started looking forward to looking in the mirror. She bought new makeup, not just lipstick, but eyeshadows and a foundation that gave her a dewy glow. She started spending more time on her hair, letting it grow longer, styling it in soft waves instead of pulling it back in its usual, sensible bun. She opened the back of her closet and reclaimed the old self she had packed away. The silks, the cashmeres, the dresses that had shape and color. She started wearing them, not just for Adam. She wore them to the grocery store. The effect was startling. She was shining, and the light was coming from within. The weekly validation from Adam, the feeling of being desired and seen, had refueled a pilot light that had been extinguished for years. One evening, about 2 months into the affair, she was in the kitchen preparing dinner. She was wearing a simple, soft blue knit dress and had her hair down. She was humming, something she hadn't done in years. Richard was home. He was sitting at the kitchen table, but he wasn't on his laptop or watching news on his phone. He was just watching her. She turned from the counter, holding a head of lettuce, and found his gaze on her. "What?" she asked, a small, nervous laugh escaping her. "Is there something on my face?" "No," he said, his voice quiet, thoughtful. He looked puzzled. "It's just, you've gotten prettier recently." Eleanor froze. The lettuce in her hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy. What did you say?" "You heard me," he said, a small, awkward smile playing on his lips. You seem different. Lighter. Happier. Your hair is nice like that. You've gotten prettier." He looked down at his hands on the table, as if embarrassed by the compliment. Then he looked back up. I feel like I've grown fonder of you lately." It had been years. Years since her husband had said anything like that to her. The compliment, so simple, so pure, landed like a blow. It was the most staggering, devastating irony of her life. Her affair with another man, her secret, passionate, deceitful affair, was making her husband fall back in love with her. She didn't know what to say. "Oh," she finally managed. "Well, thank you." She turned back to the counter, her hands trembling. She felt a wave of guilt so profound, so suffocating, it almost made her dizzy. He was noticing her. He was being kind. And it was all because she was betraying him. She felt especially horribly sorry when he spoke those kind words to her. At her next meeting with Adam, she was quiet, distant. He noticed immediately. "Hey," he said, taking her hand as they sat on the sofa in their hotel room, still fully dressed. "You're a million miles away. What's wrong? Is something bothering you?" Eleanor looked at him, her heart a complicated, tangled mess. It's about my husband." Adam's expression tensed, just slightly. "Oh," he said, his voice carefully neutral. Did he find out something?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "No, nothing like that. It's the opposite." She took a deep breath. He started to praise me. He told me I've gotten prettier. He said he's grown fond of me. He's being nice." Adam just listened, his face silent, unreadable. "And it's making me feel awful," she confessed, the words rushing out. "I feel so guilty, Adam. He's being kind, and I'm lying to his face. Maybe it's time to end this relationship. Maybe it's served its purpose." Adam's answer was simpler and calmer than she'd expected. "That's for you to decide, Eleanor. But..." She looked at him, confused by his placid response. "But," he continued, his voice gentle, "to me, the time I spend with you is very important. I find it special, too. But if you're asking me what I think..." He paused, choosing his words. "Why don't you continue? Just a little longer? I'm sure you'll find the answer." That night, Eleanor decided to continue her relationship with Adam. She wanted to take a little more time to think about what this all meant, this strange, tangled web she was weaving. A few weeks later, about 3 months into her affair, a big change came. She was making coffee on a Saturday morning. Richard was in the living room, reading the actual paper, not his phone. "Eleanor," he called out suddenly. "Yes." He appeared in the kitchen doorway, the paper in his hand. He looked hesitant. "I was thinking, we haven't really gone anywhere, just the two of us, in a long time." "No," she said, her heart starting to beat a little faster. "We haven't." "Well," he said, taking a breath, you've just been shining lately. You seem so full of life, and I want to spend time together, like we used to. Why don't we go on a trip together? For a weekend, just you and me. A trip, alone, with her husband." The suggestion, which a few months ago would have been her deepest desire, now filled her with complete and utter confusion. Eleanor's world, which had just begun to feel so clear, so vibrant and full of secret, wonderful colors, suddenly tilted. A trip with Richard, just the two of them. The suggestion, coming from him, was so far outside the realm of what she had considered possible that she could only stare at him, the coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. "A trip?" she echoed, her voice sounding small and distant to her own ears. Richard, misinterpreting her stunned silence as hesitation, rushed to elaborate, a kind of clumsy, hopeful eagerness in his voice she hadn't heard in a decade. "Yeah, I was thinking we could go up the coast, to that little town we always talked about, with the cliffs and the old lighthouse. We could get a room at one of those nice bed and breakfast places, just for a weekend. No phones, no laptops, just us, like we used to be." He looked at her, his eyes searching her face, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of vulnerability there. He was asking. He wasn't just existing. He was actively trying. And it was all because of her. Because she was shining. The irony was so thick, so bitter, it almost choked her. The light he was suddenly so attracted to was a fire lit by another man. He was a moth, drawn to a flame that was, in its very essence, a betrayal of him. "Richard, she stammered. That's so nice of you. I'm speechless. It's a big surprise." "I know," he said, a small, proud smile touching his lips. He was proud of himself for the idea. I see you. You've been different. You seem happy. And I want to be a part of that. I've missed us. I've missed us." The words were a knife in her heart. She wanted to scream. "Where have you been for 10 years? Why now? Why now that I finally found something for myself?" But she couldn't say that. She looked at this man, her husband, who was, for the first time, making a real, tangible effort. An effort she had been silently begging him for. To say no would be cruel. It would also be suspicious. How could the happy, shining wife suddenly refuse a romantic getaway? I'll have to think about it," she said, her voice a whisper. It sounds lovely. I need to check a few things." His face fell just slightly, but he nodded. Of course. Just think about it. I'll look up some places, just in case." He left the kitchen, and Eleanor sank onto a stool, her hands trembling. Her world of carefully constructed compartments, her life as Richard's wife and her life as Adam's lover, had just collided. She sent a single, frantic text to Adam. "We need to talk. Today. Please. It's an emergency." His reply came back within an hour. "What's wrong? Are you okay? My lunch meeting canceled. Can you be at the usual place at 1? "Yes," she sent back. "I'll be there." She drove to the city, her heart a cold, heavy stone in her chest. She felt like she was walking to an execution. She didn't know why she felt so much dread. She just knew that Richard's offer had changed the game, and she was terrified of what it meant. She was in the room first. When Adam knocked, she practically tore the door open. He looked startled by the raw panic in her eyes. "Eleanor, what is it?" he said, his hands coming up to grip her arms. "You're pale. Did something happen? Did your husband?" She started, and then the words just tumbled out, a messy, desperate confession. "He's noticed. Not us. He's noticed me. He said I'm shining. He said I'm happier. And he asked me to go on a trip with him. A romantic trip. Just the two of us. To reconnect. He wants us back." She finished breathless and stared at him, desperate for what? For him to tell her not to go? For him to be angry? For him to offer a solution to a problem she hadn't even defined? Adam didn't say anything for a long, long time. He let go of her arms, walked over to the window, and just stared out at the city, his back to her. The silence stretched, thick and unbearable. Finally he spoke, his voice quiet. Well, that's a good thing, isn't it? Eleanor's heart stopped. A good thing, she repeated, her voice incredulous. Adam, what are you saying? I don't want to go with him. I want to be here, with you. He turned around slowly, and his face was a mask of such profound, gentle sadness that it took her breath away. Eleanor, he said, walking slowly toward her. Why? Why did we start this? Why did you join that app in the first place? You know why, she said, her voice rising with frustration and a strange, creeping fear. I was lonely. I was invisible. I felt like I was dead. Exactly, he said, stopping in front of her. He gently took her hands. You wanted to be seen. You wanted to feel alive. You wanted to be a woman, not a ghost. And you did that for me, she insisted, her eyes welling with tears. You're the one who makes me feel that way. I know, he said, his voice thick with emotion she couldn't quite place. And I have cherished every single second of it, more than you will ever know. But, Eleanor, just look at what's happened. You are shining so brightly. You are so full of this incredible life that your husband can see it. The man who you thought was blind to you, he's waking up. He sees you now. He raised a hand to her face, his thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped. Isn't that, in the end, what you really wanted? For him to see you? The words were a gentle, devastating blow. She stumbled back, pulling her hands from his. But what about us? She whispered, the question sounding childish, desperate. I don't want this to be over. Adam, I have feelings for you. Real feelings. Oh, Eleanor, he breathed, and she could see his own eyes were glistening. I have feelings for you, too. God, do I think I've been falling in love with you for the past 3 months. Then why? She cried, her voice breaking. Why are you talking like this? Because, he said, his voice firm but heartbreakingly kind. What's our end game here? What did we think was going to happen? Were we going to leave our spouses? Blow up our lives? We both knew that was never on the table. We both knew the rules. This was a beautiful, necessary life raft. But, Eleanor, you're reaching the shore. My purpose, my role in your story, I think it might be over. No, she said, shaking her head, the tears coming freely now. No, I don't accept that. Listen to me, he said, pulling her into his arms, holding her tightly as she sobbed against his chest. If what we had, if this gave you the strength to become yourself again, and that in turn is fixing the very thing that broke you in the first place, isn't it the most beautiful, terrible, perfect outcome? He held her at arm's length. Your relationship with your husband, it might have a chance, a real one, because you've changed. You've come back to life. You should go on that trip. Eleanor, you should go and be this magnificent, vibrant woman, and you should see if he's really woken up. You owe it to yourself to find out. You owe it to the woman you become. She stared at him, her heart breaking. He was right. His logic was flawless and generous and completely, utterly selfless. He was letting her go for her own good, and it was the kindest, most painful thing anyone had ever done for her. So, she whispered, her voice raw, This is it? This is our last time? He looked at her, his own heart in his eyes. I think it has to be. Yes. That knowledge that this was the end transformed the afternoon. It was no longer a tryst. It was a farewell. They made love with a desperation, a passion that bordered on pain. It was more intense than even the first time, because every touch was a memory, every kiss was a goodbye. It was a desperate, heartbreaking attempt to memorize each other, to brand the feeling of this connection onto their souls, so it would last. Afterward, they lay in the tangled sheets, not speaking for a long time. The silence was filled with everything they couldn't say. Finally, they got dressed. It was a somber, silent ritual. Zippers were zipped, buttons buttoned. The fantasy was over. She stood at the door, her hand on the knob. She couldn't look at him. Adam, she said, her voice small. Thank you for saving me. She felt him come up behind her. He didn't turn her around. He just rested his hands on her shoulders. "You saved yourself, Eleanor," he whispered, his lips close to her ear. I was just lucky enough to be there to watch." He pressed a long, warm kiss to the side of her head. "I will never, ever forget you." "Me neither," she sobbed. And then she opened the door and walked out of the room and out of his life without looking back. That night, she found Richard in the living room, scrolling through a travel website on his laptop. She stood in the doorway, her heart a heavy, aching void. He looked up, his face hopeful, like a child waiting for a yes. She took a deep breath, pushing down the image of Adam's face. "This is this, and that is that. I've thought about it," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "The trip." He held his breath. "I'd love to go, Richard. I think it's a wonderful idea." His face broke into a smile so wide and so full of pure, uncomplicated joy that it was almost more than she could bear. He jumped up from the chair and came to her, wrapping her in a hug, a real, strong, two-armed hug that lifted her off the floor. That's great, Elle," he said, his voice muffled in her hair. It's just great." She hugged him back, her eyes squeezed shut, her body stiff. She was hugging her husband, but all she could feel was the ghost of her lover. The agonizing, beautiful, terrible irony was complete. The trip felt at first like a strange and surreal play. The two of them, alone in the car, for the first time in what felt like a different lifetime. Richard was present. He wasn't on a conference call. He wasn't dictating notes into his phone. He was actually driving, one hand on the wheel, the other tapping along to an oldies station he'd found on the radio. He was talkative. "Look, Elle, you can see the ocean from here," he said, pointing. "Remember we said we'd come up this way? Must have been, God, 8, 9 years ago." "I remember," she said, her voice a little tight. She sat in the passenger seat, a tight, painful knot in her chest. She was grieving. She was living in a split screen. Her body was here, on this coastal highway, moving toward a romantic getaway with her husband. But her heart, her entire heart, was back in that hotel room, watching Adam's back as he walked a window, hearing his voice, gentle and final. "My role is over." Every kind gesture from Richard felt like a small, sharp stone. He opened her car door. He insisted on carrying both bags. He held her hand as they checked into the bed-in breakfast. His palm was callous and familiar, but it wasn't Adam's. The B&B itself was painfully charming, a perfect little Victorian building overlooking the sea. Their room had a 4-poster bed, a small, crackling fireplace, and a bottle of chilled white wine, complimentary, waiting in a silver bucket. It was a honeymoon they'd never really had. That night at a small, candlelit restaurant, Richard reached across the table, his hand covering hers as it rested on the white tablecloth. "Elle," he began, his voice low, his thumb rubbing across her knuckles. The gesture was so similar to Adam's, it almost made her flinch. I know I haven't been present for a long time." Eleanor looked at him. She didn't say anything. She just waited. I got lost," he continued, his eyes, so often shielded by spreadsheets and phone screens, were fixed on hers. They were, she realized with a jolt, a little scared. "I got lost in the work, in the routine, the grind. I thought I was doing the right thing, providing, building, and I forgot. I forgot how to be with you." He took a shaky breath. "And seeing you these past few months, you're just so alive again. You're shining, like you did when I first met you. And I realized I don't want to be without that. Without you, I've been a fool, Eleanor, a blind, arrogant fool. And I'm so sorry." His words weren't the poetic, worshipful prose of Adam. They weren't luminous or magnificent. They were clumsy. They were simple. They were real. They were the words of a man who was, in his own fumbling, terrified way, trying to find his way back home. "Thank you for saying that, Richard," she said, her voice quiet. Later that night in their room, the fire crackled, casting a warm, dancing light over the walls. The tension was thick. This was the point of the trip, to reconnect. Richard was visibly nervous. He paced the room, picked up a book, put it down. Finally, he just came and sat on the edge of the bed, where she was sitting, her knees drawn to her chest. "Elle," he said softly, I don't know how to start this over, but I want to." He leaned in and kissed her. It was awkward, tentative. It wasn't the sure, practiced, passionate kiss of Adam. It was the kiss of a stranger who used to be her husband. And in that moment, Eleanor had her choice. She could shut her eyes and let Adam's ghost fill the space, let the comparison poison this new, fragile thing. She could remember the hotel room, the electric touch, the feeling of being worshipped. Or she could listen to Adam's last, kindest words. My role is over. Go! And be this magnificent, vibrant woman. She was that woman now. And that woman was here. She made her choice. She put her hand on Richard's face, stopping his clumsy kiss. He froze, his eyes full of fear of expected rejection. She just looked at him, at her husband, this man who had been lost, and who was finally trying to find her. She pulled him down to her, and this time she kissed him. It wasn't the desperate, fiery passion of the affair. It couldn't be. That was born of starvation, of novelty, of deceit. This was something else. It was hesitant. It was awkward. And then, slowly it became real. It was a rediscovery. It was two people, scarred and older and full of shared history, finding a new, quieter, more deliberate language. It was not a firestorm. It was a slow, steady rebuilding of a home. It was a beginning. After returning from her trip, the silence in the house was gone. It had been replaced, not with loud noise or music or the constant blare of the TV. It had been replaced with conversation. How was your day? He'd ask when he got home, and he would wait for the answer. It was good, she'd say. I went to the gallery I was telling you about. Oh, yeah? Tell me about it. And she would, and he would listen. They took a walk after dinner. They sat on the patio with a glass of wine, without their phones. It was a new, fragile, and sometimes awkward normal, but it was theirs. One sunny afternoon, a month after the trip, Eleanor sat in the living room, the sun streaming in. She opened her phone. She looked at the Aura Connect app icon for a long time. Then she opened it. One last message. To Adam. She typed, "Thank you for everything. You were right. My husband and I were talking. We're really trying. Thanks to you, I think we have a real chance. I hope you find all the happiness you deserve." The reply came almost instantly, as if he'd been waiting for it. If you're happy, Eleanor, I'm happy too. It was a wonderful time. Be well. Tears filled her eyes, blurring the words. She typed you too and sent it. Then, with a deep, steadying breath, she went to her phone settings, found the app, and pressed delete. A small prompt appeared. Are you sure you want to permanently delete this app and all its data? She pressed yes. The icon vanished. One chapter, a beautiful, painful, necessary chapter, had come to an end. She stood and walked to the hallway mirror, the same mirror where, months ago, she had seen a ghost. She looked at the woman in the reflection. Her skin was clear. Her eyes were bright. She was 42 years old. She wasn't just a wife. She wasn't just a lover. She was finally completely Eleanor. That evening, the garage door rumbled. She heard him come in. "Welcome home," she smiled, walking into the kitchen. "I'm home," he replied. But instead of walking past her to the mail, he stopped. He put his briefcase down. He came over to her, wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, and pulled her back against his chest. He kissed her neck, a real, warm kiss that made her smile. "I was thinking," he murmured against her skin. "Forget cooking. Let's order in. Let's just sit on the sofa and have a long, relaxing meal. Just talk." She turned in his arms, her own hands coming up to rest on his chest. She looked at her husband. "I'd love that," she said. At 42 years old, Eleanor Vance was reborn. It was a gift from life, bestowed upon her by a short, merciful, and necessary betrayal. Did you enjoy today's episode? Every day on this channel, we post heartwarming and complex stories about adult relationships for a mature audience. Please subscribe and rate us highly, as it encourages us to continue creating new content. We value your feedback, so please let us know what you thought about Eleanor's journey in the comments below. And be sure to take a look at our past videos. We'll see you tomorrow.